Welcome back to Yang Daily. First off, a reminder that the YangGang's over 200,000 active members could be saving over 600,000 hours per day for phone banking if they were all listeners. And every minute counts. This is why I started the podcast, but I need your help spreading it. The faster, the better. Let's get to the news. Indianapolis YangGang are calling for a push for signatures to get Yang on the ballot there. They say that help is particularly needed in districts 1, 3, and 8. You can find a district map in the links, but to put it simply, that's the northwestern, northeastern, and southwestern parts of Indiana. If you live in those areas, definitely look up the signature gathering events, which are in the links. If you live anywhere in Indiana or surrounding states, also check it out. It looks like we're starting to get our act together on phone banking. The campaign reported that the YangGang made 67,000 calls yesterday, breaking our previous record. And we racked up 4,500 in the first hour today. This is great news. Call for Yang is growing. Now we need to keep it growing. If there was ever a time to push your hardest, this next week is it, YangGang. Let's break that record every day. Also, Bernie's way ahead of us on phone banking, and that doesn't sit well with me. Let's show them what we're capable of. In support of that, Humanity for Yang has created a phone banking leaderboard to track the top 10 volunteers with the most calls per week. So far, Tommy R. is in the lead with 479 calls, but Louisiana is close on his heels at 450 calls. Get your name up there, YangGang. And then there's this. We have hundreds of hardcore YangGang like Miguel Brighteyes on the ground in Iowa, trudging through snowstorms to knock on doors. P. Diddley Z tweeted today he's on his 995th door. They are all saying that the majority of voters are undecided and that they like Yang but just need that extra push to get him into their number one slot. These tireless volunteers are pleading with us to help them by phone banking. If our canvassers can visit almost 1,000 doors in terrible weather to convince people to caucus for Yang, the rest of us can certainly spend a bit of time on the phones each day doing simple data collection. Don't let our canvassers down, YangGang. We came up about 20% short on the donation goal again. Some people are getting worried about this, thinking that the momentum is slowing, but I think there are a number of issues contributing to this. Number one is a lot of the OG YangGang are maxed out on donations and can't donate anymore, particularly after the huge New Year's Eve push. Number two is that I think with our big pushes in canvassing and phone banking that a lot of the newer YangGang members are tending to be in the higher age bracket than what was typical before, and won't be as actively tracking goals online. Number three is that people are scrambling to phone bank and do everything else, so we aren't as focused on these goals as we were before. And number four, which I think is the biggest, is that a lot of YangGang funds are going to supporting volunteer efforts like Yang Week in Iowa. The deadline has been extended on the donation goal for 1 day, and we're almost there, so please help push it over the top. In events for tomorrow, event moderators are still needed. We have town halls in Burlington, Fairfield, Mount Pleasant, and Keokuk, still canvassing phone banking and precinct captain training events all over the early states, a new rash of math classes, not that kind, the Yang kind, all over New Hampshire designed to train YangGang, still signature gathering all over New York, canvassing in Knoxville, Los Angeles, and Joshua Tree, phone banking in Northampton, Houston, Duluth, and San Diego, signature gathering in DC, Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, Evansville, Missoula, and Rhode Island, tabling in Cincinnati, San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Mateo, YangHangs in Albany, Austin, Indianapolis, Lubbock, Brooklyn, Lawrenceville, Lewiston, San Antonio, Santa Clara, and a rock climb in Culver City. An avid YangGanger in Keokuk, Iowa has opened their house as a full-time YangHang location until February 3rd. As always, check for local events at yang2020.com/events. In other news, Dave Chappelle is officially coming to Ames, Iowa on January 28th to do a show at 8 p.m. As well, Ken Jeong is headed to Nevada and Cam Caskey will be in Iowa. Paget announced that she will be interviewing Andrew and Evelyn on her YouTube channel soon, along with Nerds for Yang and Austin Cyril. She is asking on Twitter for suggestions on what you'd like to hear discussed. If you have an issue you'd like them to speak on, follow the link and be heard. Sonny from Woonsocket put out a YouTube video today to reset perspective for those YangGang feeling down about polls or feeling burnt out. It's a good way to realign yourself, so I suggest you give it a listen. It's under 5 minutes and in the links. Sonny Payne, it seems to be a day for Sonny's, tweeted out a great resource yesterday to give to people you want to Yang but who don't have access to the internet to look up Yang speaking. It's a phone number they can dial to hear a recorded message of Yang basically giving a stump speech. The number is 877-926-4202 and is also in the links. Keep it handy when you're canvassing or phone banking. A new WBUR New Hampshire poll suggests that Bernie is far and away the one to beat in New Hampshire, leading the other frontrunners by double at 29%, and Yang coming in at 5%. The poll had a sample size of 426 Democratic voters and a relatively high margin of error of 4.8%. So while it's highly suggestive that Bernie is leading among traditional Democratic voters, I wouldn't put too much weight on the numbers themselves. And of course, all the usual provisions apply for why these polls do not accurately measure Yang's base of support. Now, maybe I'm inept, but I haven't actually been able to locate the poll itself on the WBUR.org website, nor anywhere else on the internet, only articles referring to it. As such, I can't corroborate the following, but many tweets have gone out showing favorability data from the poll, which shows Yang in second place in favorability, behind Bernie, among Democrats in New Hampshire, and Yang in first place in favorability among independents in New Hampshire. Former candidate Marianne Williamson today threw her support behind Yang in the Iowa caucuses. She is refraining from officially endorsing any candidate, but wants Yang to stay in the running, so she will be supporting him in Iowa. Ms. Williamson had a number of interesting things to say about Yang, including the following quote: "3 personality characteristics define how Andrew comes across. They are self-confidence, levity, and positivity. Andrew's personality is like a tuning fork, realigning us with something we need to retrieve. Andrew is light in tone, but deep in substance. I know from firsthand experience the breadth of his intellect and the expansiveness of his heart. That humanity first stuff applies not only to his policies, but to how he goes through life." End quote. Yang said that he is very grateful for Ms. Williamson's support and that he has, quote, "learned a lot from Marianne and continues to do so," end quote. It's unclear exactly how many follow Ms. Williamson in Iowa, but it is well known that her flock were quite dedicated and enthusiastic in their support of her, which is exactly what is needed to win the Iowa caucuses. Her first appearance will be at Yang's town hall in Fairfield tomorrow. Luchi Gayat, entrepreneur and hopeful congressman for New York, gave a soft endorsement to Yang today by tweeting an article on the death of a homeless man in New York, saying, "It costs New York City $20,000 per person per year to house the homeless in various for-profit shelters and hotels throughout our city. With Andrew Yang's UBI, the New York City government would have to spend $0 and this man would still be alive. #Humanity First." I want to dig into this a bit because near as I can tell, Yang and Bernie are the only 2 candidates who have any plan for helping the homeless, and Yang's is the only one which doesn't involve the questionable mercies of government bureaucracy. Yang's UBI would give each homeless person $1,000 per month, same as for anyone else. Many say this won't be enough to afford housing in places like New York City, and this is true. While New York's own recent trial with UBI showed that it lowers housing cost inflation, their prices would remain too high. What often gets overlooked, however, is that the homeless stay in places like New York City because they lack the income to afford housing anywhere, so they may as well stay where they can make more from panhandling. However, with UBI, they could afford housing further out from metropolises, and there would be new job opportunities there due to the increased business from people spending their dividend and from increased entrepreneurship, and the new demand for housing there would further encourage the local economy. This is how UBI can help to redistribute the population, revitalize more rural communities, and help the homeless get back on their feet. Moving on, Yang even got a shout out from MSNBC anchor Katie Tur today, who said that the only 2 candidates she hears Iowan Republicans saying they would vote for over Trump are Yang and Klobuchar. This is nothing new, as all evidence has been proving Yang has the strongest support among Republicans. It is, however, the first I've heard of Klobuchar having any popularity with that demo. Today's daily Yang policy review will be democracy dollars. This is Yang's policy to grant every adult American citizen a $100 voucher every year that can be donated to political campaigns. While overturning Citizens United and other reforms are important, The simplest, most practical, and most immediate solution to moneyed interests overriding the will of citizens is to give the citizens more money and thus more say. The $100 per person amounts to over $23 billion nationwide per election, allowing the will of the people to drown out the $6.5 billion spent on federal races in 2016, $1.6 billion of which was dark money. Today's Yang Daily 10 task is, in the continuing trend, phone banking, though the team also suggests that you give your pet a Yang hat so they can rep the gang. Keep in mind that all you have to do when phone banking is to ask a couple simple questions to collect data. That's it. And if you're one of many international YangGang, you can still phone bank. We owe this to our canvassers, YangGang. And that's our Yang news for today. Collect signatures in Indiana, check your local events, send Paget your suggestions, listen to Sonny's message, record that phone number for yanging without the internet, and get on the phone banking leaderboard. As always, please share this podcast so we can save people as much time as possible for volunteering, and don't forget to Yang daily.